Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the third episode of the MotoGirlyPops podcast. I'm Daxa.
I'm the TVRoomRaccoon.
And just a quick reminder, we're on all podcast platforms. So we have an RSS feed link in the YouTube description. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can listen or watch wherever you want. You don't have to be trapped here in this panopticon if you don't want to be. What do we have in store for us this time?
What do we have in store? So we're recording this before the first race of the season. I think we can safely say both of us are very ready for the season to get started.
Yes, I'm itching.
It's really funny because I feel like the seasons are so long now that at the end, I was the same last year. Like the season ends and I'm just like, you know what? I'm done with this. Like I need a MotoGP break. I am really over this shit. And then you have the off season,
like months though, like for it to come back.
Exactly. So you have the off season, and you have like the holidays, and then the launches start, and then the testing starts, and then the silly season rumors go bananas. And at this point, I'm dying to see the bikes back on track.
Yeah, me too. It's been plenty long enough. It's been more than long enough. Let's cut to the chase. Let's see some racing.
So what we will be doing today is we will be reviewing the last of testing and how things are looking going into the season. We will be talking about what we expect from the first race. And we also figured, out of the goodness of our hearts, we would offer some small pointers of advice to not Dorna, whatever they're called now, MSEG.
Smeg.
Okay, Oxley's already calling them Smeg. I feel like we can just make it a thing at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of rude, but I appreciated that from Mr. Oxley. It's a good little friendly dig, if you will.
MSEG just sounds like a new racist conspiracy theory about MSG additions to food.
True, it really does. I think every time they remove one more beloved track from the calendar, we make their nickname a little ruder. We'll add one more syllable to the smeg if they take away like Mugello, for example.
I agree. All right. So do we want to start by looking at testing now that the Buriram test is over?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I take it you have some statistics for me that perhaps all other podcasts that we've listened to haven't really paid too much attention to.
I don't know. I think that MotoGP honestly is pretty good about this compared to certain other motorsports. In that after testing, you will have a lot of journalists and podcasters analyzing the sprint sims.
Mm-hmm.
I also just want to give a huge shout out to MotoTiming.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, he is not the hero that Gotham deserves, but the one it has right now. And we are so grateful for that. For those who are not familiar, MotoTiming.live is it's just like a brilliant website with live timings, results, stats. And he keeps adding new features to it, and it's so great. And the most recent feature is that he has added a race pace analysis for the tests, where he will the site will automatically look at test runs, and every run that is above 5 laps or something like that, it will calculate the average pace.
I just want the listeners to understand what an incredible feat of mathematics and coding and wasting of Rob's time and his life this is, because for example, not all of the riders, in fact, most riders don't do an entire sprint length when they do their simulations. Like a sprint might be 10 to 12 laps. They might only do 8 or 7. And then within the simulation, sometimes they fuck something up or they'll make a mistake. And if that lap is a little screwed up, they'll just completely back out of it. And that lap will randomly be 3 or 4 entire seconds slower than the rest of the run. And so he's completely taken into account all of these things in terms of excluding certain laps from the run, and then the total run length, and then accounting for the different run lengths in the pace calculation. And I just think that that's a very nice and thorough thing to do. Also, poor guy has to fight the Dorna API pretty much every day, because I understand why it's not really a priority for them to maintain perfect usability on an open API on a product that they are ostensibly making money from and selling. So I can understand why they don't want to prioritize the free aspect of this product that they're selling. But wow, he's had to deal with a lot, hasn't he?
Yeah, just a huge, huge shout out to Rob, aka MotoTiming. These are the fan efforts that make data-driven analysis of MotoGP fun, and we are really grateful for it. But before we delve into the numbers, or perhaps as part of delving into the numbers, I want to start by saying, Daksha,
Yes.
are you ready for this Ai Ogura domination?
I am so glad you asked. Aprilia dominance could bore fans, as one procrastinate friend of mine loves to say. Because, okay, listen. I understand the haters will come at me with, oh, it's Buriram, it's hot, it's in Asia, he's just gonna do great on this one race and then we're all gonna forget about him for the rest of the year. I don't want to hear it. He was nowhere near where he is right now in last year's test. Also, his long run was kind of quite a few laps as well.
He did, I think, a full sprint sim, but he had the fastest sprint sim of anyone.
Mm-hmm. And it was a 12-lap run. It wasn't like your little... I was going to say some rude words. Yeah, it's not... It was a 12-lap run. It wasn't like your average weak-willed 7 or 8 lap sprint sim. It was a solid 12 laps of blistering hot pace in the blistering hot Thailand sun. And I am so ready to see my boy fuck. Let's see him destroy.
Ai Ogura is going to be cooking this weekend. And I also, like what you said, people are going to be like, oh, it's just Buriram. Okay, I don't care if he's invisible for the rest of the season, but he gets podiums this weekend. I'm here for that.
Yeah, that's what we want to see. It's the kind of thing that's going to keep his stock up as well. I don't know. It's also something to be said. It's not just he did okay. He did exceptionally well in this test. Arguably okay, I know test results aren't the be all end all of everything, and some of the stronger performers are probably leaving a little bit in the pocket to deploy in the race later. But oh my god, if he's this fast during the actual race weekend, I think he will outperform his performance from last year, which was already exceptional.
I think Ogura did extremely well. I also think Bezzecchi had the best test of anyone. His race run, he did 20 lap race run, which was only 0.3 slower than Ogura's race pace. Bezzecchi was as fast as Alex Marquez. Bezzecchi's 20 lap run was as fast as Alex Marquez's sprint run.
10 lap run, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm never gonna count Linea out. Obviously, there are also caveats Pecco, for instance, did his sprint run, did his sprint sim on the second day, not the third one. Mark crashed during his race sim, which was extremely stupid and preventable of him. More on that later. But yeah, I'm feeling good. And I have a second question for you, because clearly you are very happy to see this Ogura domination coming.
Yes.
In our first episode, we predicted the results of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And you, like me and everyone else in the known universe, predicted Marc Marquez to win the title.
That's right.
But you also said, with Bezzecchi in second place, but you also said that when we were discussing Bezzecchi, you said that you were actually really close to considering him for the championship.
Mm-hmm.
How are you feeling about that decision where you eventually landed on no, Mark is still gonna take it?
Yeah, I mean, if I was gonna be the one person to predict that Bezzecchi would win the world title this year, in a sea of people predicting that Marc Marquez are gonna win, and then I end up being right, that's an insane aura gain on my part, if I can just say so myself. That would be incredible. I would love the clout that comes from that. That being said, I can't say that I regret it just yet. I think he has it in him, and I've been a day one believer. I've been since 2022 Marco Bezzecchi believer.
You're a Marco Bezzecchi truther.
Exactly. I kind of always thought that he had it in him. And if there's gonna be a year, this is kind of the year. The cards are in his hand. he's got it there. He just needs to take it. The only problem is that the person he has to take it from is the most prolific world champion of all time. So
I was just so happy to see the Aprilia results, because after Sepang, it really didn't feel like one of those, like, you know, Gigi La Linea kicking down the door and saying, okay, playtime's over. You know, y'all had fun at the end of last season, but that ends today. And I think, like, one thing is obviously, like, for the interest of the championship, having more contenders is always good. But we also just know that historically, like, some of the best racing we get is when we have people on different bikes racing each other. So you have different bikes with different strengths and weaknesses, and, like, you know, which makes it, I'm not going to say easy to get good racing in this day and age, but easier than when you just have, like, 4 Ducatis with the exact same.
Yeah, because it lends itself to, like, overtakes in different corners, for example. Like, if they do have different strengths, then you can reliably expect an overtake from one person in one part of the lap, and then you can reliably expect an overtake from the other person in another part of the lap. So then you sort of naturally get this ebb and flow of, like, that creates a good and exciting battle to watch. So I'm totally with you there.
I do want to I think we are not yet seeing the end of the Yamaha suffering factory.
No, they're still going strong. They're still putting out record numbers of suffering.
They are on, like, a truly impressive streak, I feel.
Yeah. I heard that Japan's going to be the world's largest exporter of suffering this year, thanks to Yamaha Motor Corporation.
I would believe it. It's just really impressive for, you know, it must mean a lot for a factory like Yamaha to have an ambassador and front figure like Fabio Quartararo, who can just embody the principles of suffering in public, and who can just really showcase to the world the glory and strength of the suffering he is experiencing. Yeah.
He's really, really taken their values of suffering, and you can clearly see that he holds it close and dear to his heart, to suffer as much as possible. So good on him.
I think, you know, MotoGP is has this new like branding campaign going for 2026, whatever. It's the whole, like, hashtag Wired Different thing. I think he embodies raw, authentic suffering in a way that, like, MotoGP could not ask for more.
No, they really could not. Let's hope, though, for his sake, that we don't see too many more images of him shaking, crying, and throwing up in his helmet on the side of a racetrack while beating his head into the wall. I really don't want to see any more of that. As evocative as it is of the highs and lows of motor racing, someone please free my son.
But yeah, Fabio Quartararo is not having a good time. Yamaha is not having a good time. This is to be expected. How do you feel about Honda and KTM?
Yeah, I think that both of those factories specifically have a lot to be proud of in terms of, like, making forward momentum. I just don't think it's going to be enough. I don't think Pedro Acosta is going to regret leaving, for example. And I don't really see a world in which John Mir and Luca Marini pull off miracles this year. So I stand by my predictions on all fronts. That being said, I am impressed with the forward progress they've made. It's just, I just think that Ducati and Aprilia are in another realm entirely.
Agreed. So one of the stats I keep track of, one of the spreadsheets I have going, is I have a spreadsheet over rookie testing performance going back the last, like, decade and a half.
Yes, this is one of my favorite ones of yours.
So I find it really interesting. Obviously, like, there's a limit to how much you can read into things. And, you know, occasionally, like, you look at it and be like, oh, this one rookie had, like, an absolutely awful test and they were totally off pace. What happened? And then you look closer and it's like, oh, and then he had arm pump surgery 3 days later. You know, like there can be extenuating circumstances, obviously. Mm-hmm. This is not the capital T truth of rookie expectations. But there are some really interesting things. So what I try to compare is I compare how they do at different. So for instance, like the immediate postseason test, whether that's at Valencia or somewhere else, like how in percentage terms, how much is each rookie, who in most cases are on a MotoGP bike for the very first time, at the end of the day, how far are they off the P1 time and how far are they off the fastest time set on the same bike?
Yeah.
which can frequently be more instructive. And then I do the same for like the first test of the year, which is usually like the Sepang test. And then the final preseason test, which is now, of course, what we've concluded. And it is, I mean, for one, it's really interesting to be able to go back and see how different rookies like progress through those tests. Like someone will start maybe on the postseason Valencia test, they'll be 2% off the pace. And then at the next test, they've like clearly figured it out, and now they're like very close to the best rider on the same bike. And then, of course, like you have the insane cases of someone just showing up and like wiping the floor.
Mm-hmm.
But I did this after the Sepang test.
Is this the Morera slander again?
Yes, I got quite concerned.
I knew this was coming.
I got genuinely quite concerned. I wasn't able to do this in our last podcast because, as we said, we recorded that while the test was still going.
Yeah.
But Diogo Morera, I looked back at all the rookie test results after like the first big test of the preseason. So again, in most cases, Sepang, and like during COVID, it might have been Qatar or something. And Diogo Morera was so far off the best Honda time in percentage terms. He was the rookie of the past multiple years. He was the rookie who had been the furthest off the fastest rider on the same bike since Tom Luthi in, I believe, 2018.
Right. And it's not even like by a small margin.
No. He was really concerningly far off. And much further off than Toprak was to the fastest Yamaha. And I think, and that also, yeah. And then I got, my eyebrows definitely went up on that, up at that.
Mine did too, but you couldn't tell.
Okay, can we just take a moment to appreciate Daksha's bleached eyebrows, because they are extremely
They're already growing back, but yeah, I look a little bit like an alien right now.
Iconic, and we do love aliens in MotoGP. Hey.
Whoa, this is my Casey Stoner cosplay.
This is your Casey Stoner cosplay, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Anyway, you were saying?
No, I was saying. Then I think it was Neil Morrison shared that he'd heard that Morera actually had arm pump issues during the Sepang tests, which is, I mean, again, that's the sort of thing that might explain that kind of performance. And I feel better about it now after the Buriram test, because he has gotten closer. And in fact, I believe, I will pull up the numbers in a moment, I believe Toprak is now further off the best Yamaha. That
is comforting.
Yes. With the caveat that in a lot of these testing situations, the best Yamaha will be Fabio Quartararo, who I believe has a higher performance ceiling than, let's say, Joan Mir or Luca Marini or Joan Zarco.
Yeah.
But I will say neither Morera nor Toprak are exactly setting the world on fire compared to previous rookies.
No. Aren't they both still slower than Chantra was with the same statistic?
Let me pull up the stats. Okay. Morera ended the final day at Buriram 1.41% off P1, which is about as far off P1 as Aldeguer was last year. And Aldeguer was on a Ducati that I think we can safely say is faster than this year's Honda. And then Toprak. Scroll. Where are you, Toprak? Toprak is 2.37% off P1, albeit only 1.23% off the fastest Yamaha. So, that is presumably also because the Yamaha is...
a dog. Yeah, and also when I get inevitably proven right about how incredible and amazing Toprak Ratsuka-Liolu is going to be on a MotoGP bike, then, that will also put that into context a little bit.
Yes. And Toprak, for instance, is currently closer to the fastest Yamaha than Aldeguer was to the fastest Ducati last year.
Oh, wow.
Though they are still both beaten by the GOAT Samket Chantra.
One day the world will come around and understand the feelings that I harbor for young Mr. Chantra. Anyways, yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing how all the rookies perform this year. Do we have anything else to say about this before we move on?
No. Do we have anything else to say about testing?
I wanted to ask one last thing to you about testing before we move on. Do you think that this is going to be another year of Gigi Delinia putting every other factory into a box and then making them Chris Angel their way out?
That's a very evocative image. Thank you, Daksha. I think I'm an optimist. I'm gonna say no. I think the concessions are working. I think that is really what we are seeing. The concessions are working, and they are, in part, they're working because the people who are doing worse are getting more opportunities to improve. But most of all, they're working by curtailing Ducati.
Right.
And I think Gigi Delinia is still going to be very confident that the championship is it's going red, to put it that way. Which in turn, especially considering the development of the 850cc's, like there really isn't that much of an incentive to keep pushing for those marginal gains this year necessarily. I mean, again, last year, up until Mark got injured, how many Grand Prix were not won by a Ducati? There was Zarco in Le Mans.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Bezzecchi in Silverstone, which should have been Quartararo.
Yeah.
And that was it.
That's,
Right? Like, I'm not missing any. No, that was it.
That's pretty much it.
And I can't imagine that being the case this year. And I'm sure now Ducati's going to go on like a 35 race winning streak just because I said that. But
okay, well, here's hoping that that's not the case. All right. I'm sure you have a lot of opinions about this next one. Phillip Island leaving the calendar. Thoughts? Feelings? How heartbroken are you? It has to be at least a little bit. You have a heart, right? Do they have hearts in Norway?
They're very cold, but I do have a heart, and it does beat quite strongly for Phillip Island. I think we have to separate this discussion into two different parts, maybe even three.
Yeah.
One is leaving Phillip Island.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is the place we're going, Adelaide. And then possibly a third one is like the decision making around this and whether this is just the opening shot of the Liberty era.
Sure. I think, yeah, absolutely. It's important that those things are separated. And for the first one, leaving Phillip Island, I think I saw something on Twitter that completely sums up the entire situation for me, which was someone posted photos of like signboards or stickers that someone had put on local cafes on Phillip Island saying, "Save the MotoGP race. The government's doing this. We're going to lose the bid, blah, blah, blah. Save the race." And I was like, the correct time to put those signs up, if you care about your local community losing a massive tourist attraction, was 10 years ago, maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, or even last year might have been enough. But what are you doing putting that sticker up in like the second week of February? It's over. It's done.
Daksha, I want to apologize in advance for this.
What?
Before this segment, I will be making F1 analogies.
Oh, I mean, I'll hate you, but I'll hate you quietly.
I appreciate that. That is also the Norwegian way.
Okay.
I think, for instance, one of the comparisons I've seen a lot of people make is that this would be like F1 leaving Spa, which of course, like they're kind of already doing. Like Spa is now going to alternate with Barcelona on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually don't think that's a good comparison, even though they are both, tracks with incredible history, really just iconic traditional racetracks.
And really fast fucking corners. Oh my God.
Exactly. And the reason I do not believe that analogy makes sense is that Spa in the past 5 to 10 years does not actually make for good F1 racing.
That's not Spa's fault.
No. I mean, like, that's the fault of the that's the fault of the cars. That's because the cars have gotten too big. Sure, but the difference here is that Phillip Island does still close. Like, Phillip Island throws up bangers every single year, and that's what makes it different for me. It's not just like, oh, we are leaving a track that has this great history that that we can watch all these iconic races in the past. No, you can go to Phillip Island every single year and expect that you will have. That what you will experience will be one of the top 3 races of the season.
Yeah, and I think that's true despite the fact that it's in the wrong time of year. You have all this inclement weather. You've got animals running on the racetrack. Sometimes they don't run full length races there, and all of this other stuff. When I think David Emmett mentioned that, like, often audiences can find themselves at Phillip Island not watching a full weekend's worth of racing that they've paid to see because of all of these factors. I think that those are all very valid complaints, but despite all of that, it still regularly produces the best show on the calendar.
And I think the fan discussion online is that MotoGP is leaving Phillip Island because Liberty is now in charge and all they want is money. Which, like, that might be true. I don't know. And that it's a pure cash grab situation. One, I don't think that's necessarily entirely the case. I believe that there has been some discussion, like you said, about the, save Phillip Island. Like, the place has needed substantial investments for a decade, and has kind of gotten away with not doing it because it's Phillip Island. But beyond that, I believe that leaving Phillip Island is a business mistake.
I'm inclined to agree with you, but I do think it's a business mistake that would have happened regardless of Liberty Media. And regardless of an alternative street circuit that might draw in bigger crowds, I think it's a business mistake that MSCG would have made on their own, even without the influence of Liberty. I think it was a long time coming. But I think I see where you're going with this concept of it being a business mistake. And especially if you think about it as like a broadcast product and a TV product, I'm completely with you.
There is no track on the calendar that throws up viral moments, or moments with the potential of going viral, I should say, like Phillip Island. I just think if I can put on my mean, evil, capitalist, Machiavellian hat for a moment, I understand that, multiple journalists and reporters have said that actually, like, Phillip Island, again, the facilities have not really been up to par. It's been sorely lacking investments, all that jazz. If I were our evil American overlords,
kind American overlords who will give us media passes. That's what you meant to say.
Our evil American overlords, in the terms of
right, sure.
If I were our American overlords,
our morally neutral American overlords,
if I were our pure neutral American overlords, I would be telling the writers and the paddock and the journalists and the audiences there, whatever, to suck it up. Not because I personally believe that's the morally correct thing to do, but because, like, you nailed it. The TV product it produces, the broadcasting product, the social media product it produces, is so great that it's sort of like, okay, like, I'm sorry, y'all, you're just gonna have to stick it out in the mud for this weekend.
Yeah, Phillip Island is the lost leader of the MotoGP broadcast product.
Yeah, and I think that is more true than ever because the racing is so bad frequently. Yeah. That the age of aero and ride height devices has made close racing and overtaking so difficult. And of course we have the introduction of new stop and go tracks that really don't lend themselves that well to a lot of exciting races, some of them at least, that maybe in the past you could have made more of an argument for losing Phillip Island because there were more races on the calendar that were reliably excellent. Now that's not the case.
I'm with you there. They need to farm those clips. And they are working off, in my opinion, admittedly uninformed opinion, the race in Adelaide is going to make so much more money
than Phillip Island ever did. I totally believe that. I totally, it's going to draw huge crowds. It's probably going to draw more sponsors. But I believe, I'm going to say that this is, in the business sense, kind of a case of like pissing your pants to keep yourself warm. They are taking a short-term, improvement on the financial side and the audience attraction side. And not recognizing how it's going to harm the long-term global growth of the sport,
or even the vision of the brand as a whole. Excuse me, I have a very milky coffee. Or even harming like the vision of the brand as a whole. And to that end, I really hope that Adam Wheeler is correct when he says that they're going to find a way to bring it back, whether it's as another Grand Prix, like a Pacific Grand Prix or something else. They're going to get their act together and bring it back somehow. I really hope he's correct, but yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
How do you feel about the Adelaide track?
Yes, I was just going to ask you about this. I think that a lot has been said about the discussion that's been happening online about the safety fears that people have, because when they think of street circuits, they think of close walls, they think of like the unfortunate long and illustrious history of deaths at places like Macau and Isle of Man TT. I don't think it's going to be that. I don't think safety is as much of a concern, but the safety conversation being such a salient topic of discussion right now did bring to light some things that are kind of ticking me off and actually got me kind of irritated. And I think that like what's irritating me right now is the fact that a lot of riders have sort of shown themselves to not really have the kind of backbone that they would require should something be of serious safety concern. And I'm drawing this mostly from Matt Oxley's article, which is one of the first to come out, that really analyzed and gave an editorial take on this whole shift from Phillip Island to Adelaide Street Circuit. Because he brought up interviews that he had done with riders after the unfortunate passing of Borja Gomez. And the general consensus among the riders is that safety is not their job. It's not their thing to think about, and therefore they'll close one eye and let Dorna and the FIM deal with it. And I just think that that's throwing away a huge, important, and critical piece of leverage that they have as the people whose lives are on the line, on one hand, but also as the people who make the product what it is on the other. There is no MotoGP without those 22 riders. This might be a hot take, but I don't think you could get the second 20 best riders in the world and create as good of a show as you can with the 20 best riders, if that makes sense. I think that those people are there for a reason, mostly, with very few exceptions. And I think that because of that, I worry that those riders are not recognizing the negotiating leverage that they have. And I worry that they're uncharacteristically valuing their lives less than fantastic and great historical writers of the past, who we lionize as being so brave and so, devil may care. Your Barry Sheens, your that entire generation, your King Kenny. These are your Wayne Gardners. These are people who are famous for advocating for safety and famous for using their leverage as the stars of this amazing global show to make sure that fewer and fewer riders die every year. And we're very lucky that that is the case now. And I just think that the current crop are taking it for granted. And that makes me sad. And I'm not actually concerned that Adelaide will be unsafe. I'm sure it'll be safe. I'm sure they will leave no stone unturned, no gravel pebble unturned to make it safe. But just in the case that it's not, none of the riders are going to do anything about it. And that makes me sad.
I see your point. I'm not quite sure I agree, actually. Well, I'm not quite sure I agree on all of it. I think the comparison to historical writers is really, really interesting. But obviously, that was also a very different era. Those writers famously advocated for safety, but they did so at a time where writers died on the regular. in the premier class of motorcycle racing in a way that simply does not happen now. And
because of their work. It doesn't happen anymore because of their
absolutely. Work. But my point is that I don't think it's quite fair to say that the riders today care less about safety, because the reality is that the situation is more safe than it was. But the other thing, because you're talking about the riders using their leverage, and that the 22 next best riders in the world, that would not be as good and as fun of a show. I mean, really, it's a classic prisoner's dilemma case where, if one rider says, I think this is too unsafe, I'm not going to race, that means that there's one less rider to beat for the others.
Yeah.
You're going to be incentivized to stay on regardless. That being said, one example that I think is interesting to keep in mind right now in this discussion is that I do think there have been cases in the recent past where the riders have used that leverage. And one that comes to mind is the end of 2024 with the flooding in Valencia.
Oh, come on.
I remember before it was made public, I remember that the riders were increasingly saying publicly that they thought it would not be right to race in Valencia given the horrific damage and devastating the tragic events. And then I remember at the, I think, media day during it must have been Malaysia because that was the weekend before. Pecco Bagnaia, who at this point, of course, was in a championship fight against Jorge Martin, Pecco Bagnaia just flat out saying to the media, I will not race in Valencia, even if that costs me the championship.
He's a good bean, isn't he?
He's a good bean, isn't he? And I don't think that's a Pecco specific thing. I think that there were multiple riders who were obviously, that one left the strongest impact because he was in a championship fight, but there were multiple riders saying it would not be right to race in Valencia. We should not be racing in Valencia. And that to me stands out as a more recent situation in which the riders actually did kind of draw a line in the sand. I think really this comes back to sort of the eternal discussion of a rider union, because a big part of the point of a rider union would be to get past that prisoner's dilemma where you are going to benefit if the others step back. If you are jointly and collectively saying, no, we don't accept this is not okay. I don't know. When I see journalists discuss it, the consensus seems to be like a rider union is never going to happen. I think that's a bit easy to say, the sort of it is this way. It's always been this way. It's not going to change. Formula One does have a drivers' union, but that drivers' union, which had been disbanded at that point for multiple years, was reformed in its current shape right after the death of Roland Ratzenberger and Ayrton Senna. That was the direct catalyst. I think they reformed it the week after, something like that. And I really, really, really wish and hope that we can get a riders' union in MotoGP without some sort of devastating event preceding it.
My only thing is that my skepticism draws from the fact that I think these kinds of horrific events have already happened. I consider what happened to Noah Detweiler to be horrific. I consider what happened to Borja Gomez to be horrific, and we don't have a riders' union. I think that you're right in that the riders are probably better beans than I'm giving them credit for. They're probably better people and more principled than I'm currently giving them credit for, probably just because I'm currently a little ticked off. But I do think that when it's their own lives on the line and not Valencia that's an entire community, that's an entire, that's a city that was horrifically stricken by this natural disaster. And none of the riders are personally at risk or personally affected. They did that out of the kindness of their hearts. And I have no doubt that they have plenty of kindness to give. But when it's their own lives at risk, I'm not sure they'll have the same level-headedness when it's their own life, but also their own paycheck, if that makes sense.
I want to take a moment to give a shout out to specific riders. One of them is Pedro Acosta, who has been by far the most vocal rider in the aftermath of the horrific and completely unnecessary death of Borja Gomez. Pedro Acosta has been the MotoGP rider to have spoken about this the most, to have brought it up in interviews, to have been very clearly and visibly angry at how this happened and how unnecessary it was that it happened. So kudos and shout out to Pedro for that.
Ironically, he's the one who wants to race in the TT the most.
At least in the TT, you know
what you're signing up for.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. But the other rider I want to give a shout out to, and this is more contentious, is Aleix Espargaro, who for years has been kind of, I think it's easy to make fun of Aleix's sort of safety obsession. And I think it's easy to make fun of it in part because I think the other riders are so lacking on the topic. So he looks like he looks like an extremist when it comes to safety just because everyone else is absent, if that makes sense. And I don't really think that's fair on him at all. And I think, I think he gets a lot of mockery for that, and is still taking the sort of unpopular, he is consistently taking the unpopular pro-safety position in all these discussions. And I mean, I saw how much I've seen people online claiming that Aleix has been like paid off by Liberty, and that's why he's bringing up now that Phillip Island with the current speed of the bikes is not a very safe track, which is true.
No, he just really thinks that.
Yeah, but he's saying that, and he's saying also that he thinks the Adelaide track will be safe. And people are claiming somehow that Liberty Media has made a new Ferrari appear in his garage. That's insane to me. This is just what Aleix Espargaro says. He has been saying the exact same thing for his entire career. And
he's the one who said outspokenly that if there is a safety issue, nobody will go on track. And that's specifically the statement that I was like, I think they will. I think they will go on track if there's a safety issue. Anyways.
Can I say the single most unhinged, actually, I considered using this for the hot take of this episode, and I landed on not doing it. But I have seen multiple people, I have been in discussions with multiple people in the last couple of days who have genuinely, in full seriousness, argued that Liberty and MSEG are moving to Adelaide precisely because of the danger, because they think that if riders get injured and die in horrible crashes, that's going to sell the sport more.
I've seen this too, and they used the Wired Different campaign as a piece of evidence to support this argument. They're like, oh, you think we're wired different because we're crazy and we'll fucking die on camera? I don't think anyone believes that.
And I'm so I generally, again, far be it for me to defend our corporate American overlords, but I think in general, the sort of I hope people die on track because that was going to make us more money thing is a fairly ghoulish thing to attribute to someone. That's one thing. But then beyond that, I'm sorry if I'm just putting on my really mean and awful, purely Machiavellian business perspective hat. Do you know how damaging it is for sporting property when you see riders die? Do you know how many sponsors are currently unwilling to sponsor motorcycle racing because of the risk of injury and death? This, the worst thing that could happen to just the branding value of MotoGP when it comes to attracting sponsors and audiences and investment would be for riders to die.
Yep. And this extends to not only real death and danger, but even the implication of death and danger. I mean, I come from a bit of an esports background, and one of the key things when Riot Games came out with Valorant, which is sort of roughly based on the game structure from Counter-Strike, which is a huge, massive esport, is they renamed the bomb to the spike. So it becomes this nebulous sci-fi thing as opposed to a bomb. And instead of terrorists planting a bomb, it's attackers planting a spike. And the only reason they made this change, I promise you, is so that the end esports product is more sellable to sponsors. I promise you that the commercial viability of the product as an esport, of the esport as a product, is the only reason they made that change.
All right. Do we want to move on to our hot takes?
Yes, let's do it.
A final thing, and you can cut this or leave it in as you wish. Daksha,
Yes.
do you have a 20-second opinion on Francesco Bagnaia to Aprilia?
I do have a 20-second opinion. Yay. That's it.
That's it.
Good for him. He's a good bean. He's going to find a good home. He might even win another championship. Who knows if he's lucky, if Mark retires early.
And I think the dynamic between Aprilia as now the all-Italian team that are also going to come with the obvious like underdog brand because they are not the ones who won the last 2 million championships versus Ducati, which is going to be the German-owned all-Spanish rider lineup, and also
they get to be the big bad now.
They're going to be the big bad, like Ducati, and also like bringing Acosta in. Obviously, we've spoken about this before. Acosta's built for a villain arc. I think it's going to be a lot of fun seeing Bezzecchi and Pecco next year as like the upstarts taking on the power.
What do you think about VR46 essentially having a factory team now?
I think it's great. I think it's also great that it ended up being Aprilia. I don't think Aprilia, if you told Aprilia and Massimo Rivola, let's say 3 years ago, that they would be one of the top 2 bikes on the grid and that they would be the team with an all-Italian lineup that is also 2 riders who are incredibly closely linked to Valentino Rossi, I think Aprilia would have signed on the spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't even have to go to those lengths. It just fell in their lap. Yeah. Also, this is a message for my local Aprilia dealer, DD Garage. If you're listening, if they ever make a Marco Bezzecchi special edition RSV4, I'm going to need you to put my name at the very top of the list for the first allocation. Thank you very much. All right, so let's go for some hot takes right now. So this is the part of the podcast where me and Raccoon both take one hot take that we've sourced from somewhere on the internet, and then we force the other person to defend this ridiculous hot take. What do you have in store for me?
What do I have in store for you? This hot take is sourced from a veritable fountain of youth when it comes to internet hot takes, namely the motorsport.com comment section. This is not a place I recommend people enter without strong toxic waste protection. But I have, for the benefit of you, Daksha, and for the benefit of this podcast, dipped my toes into this radioactive wasteland. So this is a comment under an article about how Toprak is doing in preseason testing.
Don't make me say bad shit about Toprak Ratsikogliolu. I'm going to be so upset if you make me slander him.
It's not actually that slanderous of Toprak, but I'm just going to read it. So it begins. Toprak is only there as Yamaha wanted the sweet, sweet Red Bull money. He will be back in World Superbike in 2027. To clarify, this comment is not saying, Toprak is garbage, and that's not what I'm asking you to defend. But I'm asking you to defend the statement that, one, Toprak is here because Yamaha hungers for that sweet Austrian energy drink. And two, that he will have a single season campaign and then go back to World Superbike. Tell me why this is true, Daksha.
Man, that point B doesn't even follow point A, so I don't understand.
You got
I'm gonna have to draw the connection, like connect the red tape. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Okay, out of pure speculation, it's come to me in a dream. It's come to me in a dream. The only way Yamaha is going to be able to afford development on both the 1000cc V4 and the 850cc V4 at the same time, they're going to need to hire 300 new engineers. Who's going to pay for that? Iwata? No. They're going to need to double dip. They're going to need to follow in factory Ducati's footsteps and put 2 fingers in 2 pies Monster Energy for the factory team and Red Bull for the satellite squad. They need to guzzle that sweet, sweet Austrian extreme sports energy drink money purely to develop these two bikes. And who's the man for the job? None other than washed goat Toprak Ratsgatlioglu, of course. If you want to design a sweet handling MotoGP bike, where do you look? But the relatively easier to ride World Superbike rider. He's going to guide the development for 1 year, and then he's out of there. And then they don't need the money anymore. There you go.
I love that. I love that pick. People thought that Jack Miller was the Yamaha rider with a single-year contract for development purposes, but little did they know.
Exactly. Okay, your hot take.
My hot take.
You have to defend. And I will caveat this statement with the fact that it has been translated by some sort of AI translation tool. This hot take did not originally come in English. And let's see if you can guess which language this hot take was originally in. It's very simple. Before the arrival of one number 93, the Ducati was a bike that year after year shattered every lap record. Since the arrival of number 93, it has become an enduro bike and has been overtaken by Bezzecchi and Aprilia. This would have never happened with Bagnaia and Bastianini in the factory team. Their impeccable development has given a career to that unk. Others come in and wreck everything.
I'm sorry. I was really trying to keep a straight face.
You don't have to. Feel free to get the giggles out before you start defending this.
I love that. I love that. I rather than guess whether this was Italian or not, I'm gonna try to guess like the original Italian dialect.
Sure.
I wonder if it's from the, let's say,
the Tavullia region, perhaps.
Yeah,
small little sleepy town.
Yeah. Might be. Well, I guess we'll never know. Fascinating. Fascinating.
Coastal air. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can smell a certain sense of salt.
Yeah, there's a little bit of salt in the steak.
I agree with the steak.
Yes,
I think this is a great take. Yeah.
Okay. Do tell.
Also, Sepang 2015 was an inside job. No. Yes. I agree with this take. I don't think it has anything to do with Marc Marquez being a bad developer or intentionally ruining the bike or whatever people like to say. The Ducati has stopped setting lap records, I believe, in large part because last year the GP25 was a weaker bike than the GP24. So you had a bunch of lap records set on the GP24 and then they were not quite matched by the GP25. And I'm going to say that I think Gigi Dall'Igna and Ducati would have had far more of an incentive to get off their asses and have that fixed if they did not have Marc Marquez on the bike. I think if they had, the person behind this take is saying this would never have happened if they'd had Bagnaia and Bastianini in the factory team. I think that's true because I think if it had Bagnaia and Bastianini in the factory team last year, it would have become painfully obvious much sooner how difficult the GP25 actually was. And as such, I cannot imagine that Gigi Dall'Igna would not have been throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at that problem, trying to solve it. And, working his white bearded wizard magic until we ended up with a bike that would, in fact, have been crushing lap records everywhere. Also, I'm going to take a sideways interpretation again and say that if Marc Marquez had not been on that bike, Jorge Martin would likely have been on a GB factory bike, who we all know is a one-lap specialist. And you cannot tell me that Jorge Martin on a Ducati last year, healthy, and with a Gigi Dall'Igna realizing that the GB25 was a bike he needed to do something about, Jorge Martin would have been setting those lap records. Case closed.
Wow. You missed just one little point that I thought was kind of important from this take, which is that Marc Marquez owes his career comeback to the development of Bagnaia and Bastianini. He owes it to them. He would not have.
Did you actually say that in the original take?
Yes, their impeccable development has given a career to Unk. I don't know if that's a translation error.
You know, I think I just like, I must have heard that and I just thought I hallucinated.
Yeah, their impeccable development has also given a career to Unk.
I think that's totally true. I think, you know, Marc Marquez was kind of a nobody before he came to Ducati.
We're back here. Okay, you're off the hook. You're off the hook. We can't repeat this shit again. Let's fucking move on.
I can't. No.
All right, no more of that nonsense. We have, I think, an opportunity here because we mentioned a bit earlier about the potential, like the potential panic among the fan base about this Liberty Media takeover and what it means for MotoGP. And we touched on that a little bit, the commercialization of the sport, whether that's a good or a bad thing. But honestly, I think there are some pretty quick and easy, obvious fixes that they should make just like right off the bat. So as out of the kindness of our hearts, this is a freebie for you, Liberty Media. Go ahead and implement these whenever you want.
Agreed. And I want to proceed this by saying that, you know, this is not an exhaustive list. I think it could be really fun later to do more episodes where we discuss changes that could be made to MotoGP to grow the sport. We have also, but this is just like, this is some suggestions, not an exhaustive list. And we've also limited this in large part to suggestions that are not super expensive. You know, none of this is like things that's going to require huge financial investments or going to tracks that we're not currently at or things like that. These are things that you could implement tomorrow with not that much manpower.
Yeah, exactly. So to start us off, I had one where I thought kind of a freebie in terms of growing the sport from a commercial standpoint is a playfully antagonistic rider interview. I've always said that the way MSEG has marketed MotoGP for so long has either been like way to the extreme in terms of like fluff content pieces where they're just like reading to a camera about this emoji or that whatever, and nothing is relevant to them as a person, nor is it relevant to the sport. They're just kind of like saying memes at a camera or whatever it is. And then all the way on the other hand, you have like the serious down-to-earth tech talks for the hardcore fans and then the timing pass and all of this stuff. And in between those two extremes, there's a huge gap of like kind of fluffy interviews, but that's not really about the sport, but it's not total nonsense that's incomprehensible that nobody actually cares about. Like, I would love to see rider interviews where they're talking about who they are as a person. And my platonic ideal of what this piece of content would look like is like a cross between what Susie Perry did with the Marquez brothers and what Z-Way does on her talk show with celebrities, where she's just kind of like poking at them a little bit and like trying to push their buttons slightly and then pull back a little bit and like just sort of play with them and make them think and force them into bits. And maybe this has to be done in their native language, because if you want someone to be witty and funny, the easiest way to do that is in the language that they're the most comfortable with, which brings you to one of your quick fixes.
This is a huge pet peeve of mine, which is that MotoGP / Dorna / MSEG / Liberty / whoever, they need to lose the obsession with doing everything in English on a grid where almost no riders have English as their first language. And the difference when you compare it to sport like F1 is that in F1, English is the working language in every team. every driver has been brought up through junior series speaking English from a very young age. And that is just simply not the case in MotoGP. And the unfortunate reality is that, and I'm saying this as a non-native English speaker myself, people can get to a very good professional working level of English where you are totally capable of answering questions, doing technical debriefs, that sort of thing. But people are still not going to understand how funny you are. Your personality is still not going to translate in the same way. And so I see people looking at MotoGP riders getting interviewed in English and saying like, you know, this is fine. Like they're saying sensible things. We understand what they're saying, but you're losing all the color of it. You're losing everything that makes these people into people. So it's so hard for it to translate across. And then the follow-up to that is that whenever I bring up the suggestion, there's always someone saying, oh, but English-speaking people can't handle subtitles. You're never going to be able to reach, you know, an American audience, an English-speaking audience, if you have to give them content that is in Spanish or Italian, but with subtitles. But it's factually not accurate. Like how young generations consume media has been so radically changed through TikTok, through Reels, through COVID, through how just like the sound mixing in movies is different now.
Yeah, I was just want to say as well, like if you find yourself disagreeing with Raccoon's take here, look in the mirror. Do you have gray hair? All right, now shut up.
Shut up. Exactly.
K-pop, now shut up.
There are studies on this. There was a study published a couple of years back that said that something like 80% of Gen Z, English-speaking Gen Z members, use subtitles 100% of the time when they're watching movies or a TV series. 80%. So the whole argument about like, no, we have to do it in English because otherwise we're not going to attract the fans is just, that's like pure nonsense.
Yeah, just get with the times. Honestly, I can't see anyone from our generation disagreeing with this take, especially if you want it to be a global sport. So many people watch the sport in their native language that's not English, and they're using subtitles anyways.
And I have a final point about this, which is that, in my opinion, the one area in MotoGP where we already see this is the cooldown room.
Yeah.
Where the riders are speaking, I mean, almost entirely Spanish, Italian, or Catalan. And the same with like, you know, the car ride to the podium after the sprint races. And MotoGP lets that happen in their native languages and then post it subtitled like an hour later. And that content is so good. It's so good because you're seeing authentic, real interactions between the riders. You're seeing their personalities come through. You're seeing them joking with each other in a way that they simply do not do in English.
I'll fully admit, I go out of my way to watch every single one of the post-sprint car videos and every single one of the post-race cooldown room videos, even on days when I have no time to watch the actual interviews that are done in English. I regularly completely skip the English interviews and only watch the cooldown room videos with subtitles in their native language because it's far more illuminating and far more importantly, it's far more entertaining.
Exactly. The E in MSEG should stand for English no.
It stands for entertainment, which basically means the same thing given our current climate. Lingua franca, shove it up your ass. I genuinely think it's a better use of everyone's resources to take the time and money to hire all these people to translate every single piece of content into as many languages as they can, rather than forcing these people to learn English and then forcing your audience to learn English. Waste of time.
Agreed. And this brings us on to perhaps the biggest. I'm going to say that this is the single biggest recommendation, at least on my end. MotoGP and sport in general is fundamentally about entertainment. It's about engaging audiences and making them tune in as the races are happening. But it's also about reaching new audiences. It's about having a race happen and then afterwards having millions of people who did not watch it catch clips of it places, catch discussions of it, see podcasts for it recommended, see memes about it. That is how you spread a sport organically in the year of our Lord 2026. And the single most damaging thing MotoGP does when it comes to this topic, the single biggest hindrance is the copyright striking. They are copyright striking people who post TikTok edits. They are copyright striking people who post a video and overtake on Reddit. They are copyright striking people who make, who make YouTube videos where they discuss whether an overtake was legal or not, and they include clips from the broadcast. And it's just incredibly, incredibly stupid. MotoGP in recent years has had an increased focus on, we need to grow the fan base. We need to reach new fan bases. We need to communicate with the fans. We're going to get on social media. We're going to be better about communicating with fans. Guess what? You are not letting your fans communicate with each other. You are not letting the fan base grow organically and produce the kind of organic content that fan bases need to create. Why are people going to spend their time and energy making edits for Instagram if those edits are taken down?
You may as well be taping people's mouths shut. An entire vector of organic marketing is word of mouth. That's been true ever since marketing was ever a thing. Since marketing was invented, word of mouth as a category of marketing has existed. We're in 2026. Everything is video. Video is how people communicate. Clips, edits is how people communicate about the things that they love and the things that they're passionate about. You may as well be taping their mouths shut and saying, I don't want any word of mouth. I don't want people to talk about MotoGP or my product. I think that this obsession with and I get it, because they're panicking about the fact that the broadcast itself is the most aggressively monetized part of MotoGP, and they're panicking about having their intellectual property be stolen. It's 2026. Even if you want to go full, completely paranoid corporate route in terms of your IP, there are tools on every single one of these platforms to have revenue splitting or revenue sharing if someone uses some of your IP. If you see someone post a YouTube video discussing if this overtake is legal and they use clips from the MotoGP broadcast, the same button that you press to copyright strike it and have the content taken down, there's a button right next to it that says, give me the money from this video or a percentage of the money from this video. Done. Problem solved. Make your money from the broadcast, but stop literally taping people's mouths shut.
A couple of years back, I heard a really excellent take on this from the Racist MotoGP podcast. And this was the beginning of 2024. And remember, there was a race in Portimao, which was Mark's second race on the Gresini, where he and Pecco crashed each other out. And someone on the Racist MotoGP podcast said, if this had happened in F1, if an incident like that between two world champions happened in F1, within 2 hours, there would be literally hundreds of YouTube videos up analyzing it, talking about the angle of impact, who was really to blame. People would be publishing think pieces on the stewards discussions. It would be memed. It would be memed to hell and back. People would be posting clips about it everywhere. There would be, people who've never even heard about F1 would have clips analyzing this or making fun of it or putting a Taylor Swift song over it, showing up in their feeds because F1 allows that. And I think it's genuinely so irritating that MotoGP, again, in 2026, has still not figured out that if you want fans to engage with your sport, if you want new fans to engage with your sport, if you want this to generate actual viral content, you need to let people make that content.
And it's crazy that so many people are willing to do this free marketing for you. You don't even have to look at F1, which is a direct analog, because it's also a motorsport. Every other industry that has an entertainment product to sell is trying their hardest to fake what you have naturally as MotoGP. People who have Netflix shows are making fake Twitter accounts to post clips from the Netflix show and hoping it will go viral. They're giving away their prized product for free because that's how you market it. Everybody else, people who make music, they're posting clips from your NPR Tiny Desk concerts or whatever the hell it is. That's how a brand is built. It's infuriating to me that they don't understand this. Last one. This is one of yours as well, but I can speak to this a little bit because I used to make highlights for GG Recon for the Overwatch League back in the day. And highlights on YouTube in an actually acceptable time frame. It doesn't have to be the fully polished story of the weekend video, but just get something up. Just make a cut from the race and put it up. I want to see that up 10 or 15 minutes after the flag has waved. No more. I know for a fact that capability is already built into the broadcasting software that you use, the virtual control room thing that they have going on. I know for a fact that that's already built in. Just put the clips together and send it.
I think MotoGP also just needs a new understanding of how casual fans keep up with sports that they don't necessarily follow that closely. There are so many people that I know, people in my life, myself for that matter, who have take me. I follow MotoGP extremely closely. I follow F1 quite closely. And then there are other sports that I follow very casually. And how do I follow them casually? Well, among other things, I will watch the highlights clips. I will sometimes when I wake up in the morning, I'll watch a 5 or 10 minute highlights reel from some game that happened the night before, that sort of thing. And I don't need that highlight to be sexy. I don't need it to have music edited over it. In fact, that kind of makes it more irritating. I don't need it to have a Hollywood style voiceover. I need it to be a clips that showed the most important moments from the match so that I have a vague understanding of what happened. Yeah. The TLDR version of what happened.
And what you are is you are the person in that huge gap between the hardcore fan who will pay 140 euros for a video pass and the super, super, super casual fan who might watch a reel a week later on Instagram. There are people who want to keep up with the sport and know what's going on and stay engaged in what's going on, who fall within those two extreme ends of the spectrum. And that's who this kind of thing would kind of cater to. So I'm actually kind of curious, what sport do you follow on a casual basis like that?
Football.
Okay.
Right now, as a Norwegian, I woke up this morning and watched highlights of Bodø Glimt's Champions League match against Inter. Cool. God bless you, Northerners. We love you. And also NBA.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, lately I've been into women's hockey, ice hockey.
Ooh.
And I still watch, highlights is how I still consume esports. So Valorant, Overwatch, and now Deadlock esports. I'm just watching highlights.
Exactly. All right, so to sum that up, we take PayPal. We can figure out Cash App. I no longer have Venmo because I'm not in the US, but I'm sure I can make that work too.
Mm-hmm.
Dorna/Liberty/MSEG. We have given you 4 suggestions. None of them are going to cost you that much money, considering all of them are going to make you a lot of money in the long run. You will hear from our lawyers. No.
I'm not sure about the last one.
That's the thing you say in Norwegian to say I will invoice you, but I will just say that. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll invoice you. Don't worry about it. Yeah, definitely. And maybe jobs for my kids and my kids' kids as well.
We have given this, as Daxa said, out of the goodness of our hearts, because though we do accept PayPal, we also just I just want to see the sport grow. It genuinely, sometimes it feels kind of painful. I follow F1 closely, and I'll just be scrolling through my feed and seeing all this amazing F1, these edits, this content, these discussions, these stats analysis, whatever, all fan made, all made completely for free, all organically spreading the sport, and it's killing me. Why is not MotoGP is a better sport objectively than F1 on a number of metrics, and the fact that there's this low hanging fruit. It's so this fruit is basically overripe, touching the ground, and whatever 78-year-old Espeleta is in charge of this keeps just waving his cane around and knocking it out of the way, and it's genuinely so frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
Anyways,
and
rant over,
but sort of hopium started, because I just think that this speaks to a little bit of why we named this podcast this, because if you look at F1 and see who is making all of that stuff, it's the girlypops. Most of the auxiliary nameless, faceless F1 content that you consume on whatever social media platform you're on is it's kind of the girls doing it, and that's who this podcast is for, and that's who we want in MotoGP. We want hundreds of thousands or millions more of you caring so much about these stupid riders and this stupid sport that you would like fall over hand and foot for them.
And I want to say, like, to the people running MotoGP, until the holy girly pop trinity of TikTok, Twitter, and Tumblr is literally wallpapered with content and edits about MotoGP, you still have a job to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Finally, Daksha, as we're recording this, we are 2 days out of the first day of the first weekend of the year.
It's Rossiek.
It is Rossiek. It's Rossiek. It's Rossiek. And I cannot wait to see how this one is going to go. And do you want to predict the winners, or do you want to just give me your take on how you think the weekend is going to play out? What you're most excited to
Sure. I think my one bold prediction for this weekend is that Marc Marquez won't be on either podium.
And I thought you were going to say that he wasn't going to win either race, and I was like, yeah, that's fine, but like not on the podium. I love that. That's a great prediction. Thank you, Daksha.
You're very welcome. And this is not to say that he's suddenly magically not the greatest of all time. I just think that once it gets to elbows out, fighting and dying for, I think there's going to be like a little switch in his head, and he's going to be like, oh shit, this could really fuck me up for life. Like, this could be my last year. And he'll like hold back ever so slightly. He'll like, I'm the greatest of all time. I don't have to turn it on 1000% from round one. I can wait. Let's test the waters a little. This is the first time he's going to be fighting with people elbow to elbow since his Mandalika crash. I think that his incredible, impeccable testing performance will not one-to-one translate to his race performance when he's actually fighting with people for life and death, for victory or defeat in round one. It'll come in round two. It'll come in round three. It'll be fine after that. I just think he'll be... that's my one and only prediction.
Okay, my one bold prediction for this weekend. It's so funny because immediately I like something inside me just wanted to say like, Pecco Bagnaia 37 points.
Yeah, say it. Give it to us. Give us the juice.
I like we're in like Pecco Bagnaia is so back, and I just know that the time in which it ticks over to it's so over is coming closer. Which I find very, very unfortunate.
Well,
you know what? I'm just gonna say it. I think Pecco Bagnaia is a bit of a he comes across as too chill and nice of a person to say that he's really gonna have like a villain arc this year now that Ducati seems to have fired him. But I still think Ducati firing him and him immediately scoring 37 points in the opening weekend of the year would be hilarious.
It would be badass, and he deserves it, honestly. Because he's someone who has won championships even while cycling through It's So Over and We're So Back. Like, he's had It's So Over moments while still winning championships.
I mean, frequently, like, on the same weekend. Like, he would, like, crash out of the lead in the sprint and then win the race the next day. This seems to just be the Pecco Bagnaia MO.
Exactly. So, you know what? I see it. I respect it. Let's go. 2 crazy takes for this weekend. If we're wrong, I was going to say something horrible.
What? What were you going to say?
I was going to say, if we're wrong, charge back your Patreon subscription or whatever payment service provider you use and steal money from us. But don't do that.
I love that.
Also, we don't have a Patreon yet.
That is also an issue. Yes, correct.
One day.
And finally, before we wrap up the show, Daksha, we have an exciting development in the category of women in racing this weekend. Do you want to bring us up to speed?
The Moto4 Asia, previously called Asia Talent Cup, is coming to Buriram with the whole entire MotoGP circus, and they are the support race for this round, for the very first round of the MotoGP calendar, and that means that Chen Shiyu will be on track. So you can watch out for her. So if you have time, go find the Moto4 Asia broadcast to watch your very first woman in racing this year. Although she's more like a little baby girl, to be honest. She's so tiny.
So she will be the first woman in racing that we will watch actually race. And we are
She's
excited to see
also a huge Pecco Bagnaia fan, by the way.
Really?
So I sincerely hope your prediction comes true and we'll see some adorable clips on the Moto4 Asia Instagram page of her like getting something signed or whatever.
That's incredible. Okay, I'm a huge fan of Chan Chi-yu. Thank you for this critical information.
You're most welcome.
All right. And on that note, want to wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. Please, if you enjoyed this, like it, subscribe, comment below, because you guys have had some pretty fun things to say on all platforms. Raccoon has been replying to a bunch of YouTube comments. I've been replying to some Spotify comments. It's been pretty fun all around. There's been some discussions every time someone posts a link to this on Reddit. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for spreading the love. And yeah, we love you back very, very much. We'll be back after the Thai Grand Prix. Probably, I'm guessing Tuesday, Wednesday-ish. See how. That's a Singapore. Oh my God, I just realized I use Singaporean slang in this podcast. Okay. And then the other thing is we had some kind of fun moments in this podcast that I don't think we can really put in, but maybe I'll put a little blooper reel at the end. So if you're here for just us and not just for the racing, stick around for the next 2 minutes or so.
Okay, and on that note, thank you all and goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Okay, what are you putting in the blooper reel? I'm so curious now.
It's incredibly evocative. He's like blowing kisses to his bike while doing wheelies at Mugello. He's like, wow, what a beautiful thing you are. Mwah, mwah, mwah. He's like, now a wheelie. It's awesome.
I love that.
I don't know how you can not be charmed by such a weirdo.
He is a weirdo.
Yeah, and he's such a bike fucker too. Like he
he's
loves
such a bike. No, I mean you're wrong. He's a bike husband.
Right. Well,
like this man is not. He's not even a bike fuckboy. He's just like he wants to treat the bike right. You know what I mean?
One would hope that his marriage is not a loveless one.
I think we can safely say, looking at Bezzecchi with his bikes, there is
he
plenty
does fuck his wife.
I think we can safely say so.
Yeah.
I hope you include this entire segment, by the way.
I did hit record like 2 minutes ago, so this is all. It's there. It's somewhere. Whether it's going in or not is a different question. But we did record that. My belt has been undone this whole time. Do you want to say that again?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.